A group of high-end professional thieves start to feel the heat from the LAPD when they unknowingly leave behind a verbal clue about their latest heist. Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk away from in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. This is Heat. What better movie to talk about when it's cold outside than the Heat? Or Heat. It's not the Heat. I keep throwing the in there, and that's not right. That's not what this movie is called. It's called Heat. And we're here to talk about it. This is Holstered Guns, an off-season movie project between several of the creators of the Smoking Guns podcast. We're normally a podcast that deals with football, and we're ready to get back to that work soon. But we had to finish out our movies. We chose 10 movies back in like August. And here we are finishing those up. This is number 10. And today we're going to be talking about the 1995 crime drama from Michael Mann, Heat. Just some particular. I'm Philip Higginbotham. I'm joined as always by Leo Yamas. Leo, how you doing?
Doing good. Staying warm.
Are you staying warm? It's
yeah.
Cold everywhere. And
yeah, in South Texas. Nope. Worked from home today. Didn't have to brave the roads, so doing good.
Good. Heat was a movie made in 1995, directed by Michael Mann, written by Michael Mann. And we're going to talk a lot about Michael Mann because this is kind of his magnum opus. This, if you want to know what Michael Mann movies look like, this is the movie that it might not be the most successful movie. I think his most successful movie is probably Last of the Mohicans, which is nothing like a Michael Mann movie looks like. That is an outlier from Michael Mann.
Did you go and watch that yet?
Last of the Mohicans? No, I have not.
Okay. Because I know we had talked about that before we started recording these. Yeah.
Heat stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Ashley Judd, Amy Brenneman, John Voight, Natalie Portman, Ted Levine, Dennis Haysbert, William Fincher, Hank Azaria. Who else is in this thing? Tone Loc. What's my guy? Machete. Why can't I think of his name now? Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo. Yeah.
Just a ton.
Henry Rollins.
Yeah. Ton of great people in this movie. I thought that it was interesting that we have the Dennis Haysbert connection. We just covered Major League 2 weeks ago, and now we're back onto Heat, two very different movies, both starring Dennis Haysbert in supporting roles. That's kind of fun.
Oh, you know who else we talked about in the last show in Major League that was in this movie, but was also in Major League.
Piven.
Got cut. Yeah, Jeremy Piven.
Yeah, Jeremy Piven shows up for just a hot second in this movie.
Yep.
He had a bigger scene. We can talk about that a little later. I just watched the deleted scenes. Shockingly, a 3-hour movie has deleted scenes. It could have been longer. And Piven's role actually got trimmed back a little bit. Made on a budget of $60 million, brought in $187 million worldwide. It has a runtime, we just mentioned this, of 170 minutes, 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Long movie.
Man, you could cut about 45 minutes out of this movie and still get a really good movie out of it. In fact, I think you get a better movie.
Better movie. Yeah, I agree.
And we'll talk about that some. First contact. What was your first contact with this film, Leo, that you can remember?
So I don't remember who I went to see it with, but I know for a fact that I saw this in the theater in 1995. I don't recall who with, but I know I saw it in the theater. And the reason I know I saw it in the theater is because I remember being very impressed. Not impressed in the form of like, wow, that's really great, but impressed on like, wow, that's like almost excessively loud on the shootout scene, and how loud the rifles, the guns in that shootout at the end, the bank robbery. It is extremely loud, and if you watch that in the theater, you will remember just how loud they are because it was very, very loud, and I remember that.
My first, so I got a job working at Blockbuster when I left college. So I was in I was 20. I was exactly 20 years old. And there were a lot of movies that I had not seen. One of the movies that I got re-released while I was there was 1986-1987's Manhunter. It is a movie with Hannibal Lecter in it, but not Anthony Hopkins. It's based on Red Dragon, which is a novel that I really, really love. I had read it in college and really liked it. And I found out that they had made a movie based on it. And so I watched it, and I really liked Manhunter. I still think it's a very solid movie. It holds up very well. And was talking to every Blockbuster across America had to have one guy in it that was this like art house cinephile kind of guy that knew everything about movies. Our guy was a guy named Scott. He was an assistant manager there. And I said something about really liking Manhunter. And he's like, oh, if you like Manhunter, you need to watch Heat. Heat is like Michael Mann's magnum opus. It is everything that is Michael Mann. And I'd heard of it, of course, and knew who was in it. So I rented it, and his recommendation was enough for me to rent it, take it home, watch it. I loved it. I thought it was great. A 20-year-old guy loves. I don't know a lot of 20-year-old guys that can't sit down and enjoy Heat. It's a crime drama. It's gritty. It's loud. It's dirty. It's also clean and polished in areas. I want to talk about how it is both pretty and clean and polished at the same time. I think it pulls that off very well. But that was my first contact with it, was on VHS. So I didn't get to experience what I imagine it could be like in a theater with surround sound on a big screen. I love the story. I'm sure you read it too, of Michael Mann as they filmed the bank shootout scene. He used the actual, he set up microphones all around and used the actual sound, not going back in and dubbing sound and gunshots into it.
Yep.
Yeah. He uses the actual sound of the thing, and it gives it,
it shows.
It gives it some realism that just doesn't exist in other movies.
Yeah, it's really loud and echoey. I mean, each shot has an echo, which, this is happening in the middle of downtown Los Angeles with, those skyscrapers and concrete all around.
Yeah.
You can imagine firing high-powered rifles in that type of environment. It's going to be very loud and echo. Each shot is going to echo off of all that concrete and steel everywhere. So it comes across that way in the movie for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about what makes this film great, because there are some things that do absolutely make this film great. Although I think you and I are both in the same boat where we had a certain mental picture or mental sort of place for Heat, and we just went through watching it a couple of times each and might feel a little differently about it now, which is funny. It's happened to us on a couple of these movies. But I think we're there. But there are things that make this film absolutely great. First thing I want to talk about is the cast. I read off the cast list, but it is just incredible. The number of really, really solid people that are in this, but not just that are in it. Nobody is phoning it in. Everybody is doing an incredible job of living in these characters. Even like Jon Voight's a guy that I don't like most of the time. I think he kind of does sort of a phoned in sort of thing at times. And, I love Mission Impossible, but Jon Voight is not my favorite part of that movie. I think he's terrible as it. I really wish they could have gone back and gotten the right guy, because there's a famous story about Mission Impossible. They wanted to go get I can't think of the actor's name now, the guy that did the TV series, to play Jim Phelps again, because that's the character from the TV series. When he read the script and found out that Jim Phelps turns, spoiler for Mission Impossible, and ends up being the bad guy. He was like, that's not true to the character. I won't do it. And so they went and got Jon Voight. And I think Jon Voight kind of phones it in Mission Impossible. I think he's the weakest part of what is a great spy movie. I'm not a big fan of Jon Voight. Jon Voight is doing an incredible job in Heat, living in this grimy, soft-spoken sort of fence guy. It's just a great character. It's great character work from a guy that I don't see that from a lot. And there's lots of people that are doing that. Ashley Judd is doing an incredible job, although I really love her. Even Haysbert, and my favorite, the guy I'm so glad gets a shot in Heat, and it will lead to some other things, is a guy that gets so forgotten so many times, Leo. It's Ted Levine.
Okay, yeah.
Bosco. I love Ted Levine. I think he's an incredible actor, but he played Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, and it's hard to get out from under an iconic sort of portrayal like Buffalo Bill. Heat, which is only about 3 years later, gives him the opportunity to show something different, and he ends up having a pretty successful career. I'm not sure that he has if he doesn't show up in Heat, and he's not this character in Heat.
Yeah, I've got an very interesting tidbit on exactly what you just mentioned, but we'll talk about that later in the show.
Okay. All right. More cast stuff. Val Kilmer doing an incredible job. Val Kilmer he's not acting in the same way he was at one time. Val Kilmer was an incredible actor who got limited by some really tough projects to be an incredible actor in. His Batman stint is just hard to be good in. There's not a lot to work with. The Saint, which is an okay movie, but there's not much for him to do in it. He can't be Roger Moore because in the 90s, The Saint was something different. And so he's not able to have the kind of, but you look at Tombstone, which is what we started this whole project off with. You look at this and some of the other things. Top Gun, Val Kilmer does a great job in Top Gun of being that character and living in that character of Iceman. Other people that are just incredible. Go ahead.
I've got two for you. Other big characters, but just like nailed that character, that work. Hank Azaria is Marciano.
Yes, I was just about to bring this up. Hank Azaria is incredible.
Just the sleazy, guy that's cheating with what's his name's wife, Charlene.
Chris,
Chris's wife. And like he really nails that kind of slimy guy, character that just very self-interested, slimy kind of character. And then the other one, speaking of slime, Van Zant, William Fichtner.
Yes, William Fichtner.
I think he really does a good job of being that, kingpin, kind of arrogant, rich scumbag, but he's really just a weakling when he doesn't have his paid, bodyguards around. He's a coward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And shows up in a movie that was directly inspired by Heat. One of the best openings of a movie that there is anywhere is The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
The heist at the beginning of The Dark Knight is all inspired by Heat. You can see Heat DNA all over it, and William Fichtner shows up in it with the shotgun. And do you know whose money this is? Which is great because it's a callback right to what Christopher Nolan had used to sort of build a blueprint for that heist off of. Just incredible. Hank Azaria, let me ask you a question about Hank Azaria. What do you think of when he pops up, shows up, or you think of Hank Azaria? What's the first thing that your mind goes to? What is he known for in your mind?
The Blue Raja from what's that movie about the superheroes?
Mystery Men.
Mystery Men. Yeah, isn't he the Blue
Okay.
Rajay guy? The guy that
Okay.
has the forks and spoons, his mother's silverware set, and he flings
Okay.
them around. Yeah, that's the first guy that comes to my mind when I see that actor, because that's one of my throwback movies that I enjoyed.
Every time I see that guy, no matter what he's in, even when he's in. Last night I'm watching this movie with Abigail, my daughter, who came on and did the Aliens episode with us a couple of weeks ago or about a month ago. And we're watching this, and he pops up, and I go, "Hey, it's Apu," because he is the voice of Apu for the first 25 years of the and other voices too. But I always think of him as Apu. Yeah, great cast. Even like you mentioned, Piven shows up in it. Tom Noonan, who was in Manhunter, he is actually the Francis Dollarhide character in Manhunter. Tom Noonan shows up in this. Dennis Haysbert in what is really a small part, but even that small part, when he gets killed, and he's the first one killed in that bank heist, you feel bad because this guy never had a shot coming out of prison. Like, he's paroled out of prison and never had a chance to do anything other than what happens to him. Like, he gets forced down this road, and it ends up getting him killed.
Yeah, small role, but I think significant role. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the audience.
We'll talk a lot. I know you and I both have the same opinion on Natalie Portman's addition or her part in this movie. But let's not take anything away from Natalie Portman. She does a great. Remember, she had just done The Professional, Leon the Professional, whatever you want to call it.
Fantastic movie.
Right.
I love that movie.
And then she steps into this. I'm watching this last night with Abigail, and she's like, "Hey, that's Princess Amidala." And I'm like, "Yeah, only about 4 years before being Princess Amidala too." And she's like, "Are you serious? She looks like she's 12." And she does. She looks she's incredibly young to be doing the part that she's playing. The only person in this entire movie that I would recast if I could, and if Sturge was here, he'd give me a hard time, is Justine, Pacino's wife. I would put a different actress in there. I think she did okay, but I would like to see something different than what we get. But that's neither here nor there.
I think maybe that's because she's just not likable. You don't like her. You don't like her
it's
as
true.
a person
you
in
don't.
this movie. You don't like the character.
Which I'm very careful with that. I know that there are certain people that are written so evil, bad, poorly, or not poorly. They're really well written, but you're not supposed to like them. And I tend to give actors and actresses that do those parts a lot of credit because they end up getting hated. Anna Gunn gets way more flack than she ever should for being Skylar White in Breaking Bad. People hate her, and I'm like, she's doing a great job because you hate her character. Jack Gleason quit acting altogether. Partially because of the hate that he got from fans from playing Joffrey in Game of Thrones. That's crazy. This guy does an incredible job building this character and is good at his craft, and people are going to give him so much crap that he's like, forget this.
Probably the most hated character in TV history.
Fairly.
He did.
Joffrey is terrible. Joffrey has no redeeming quality whatsoever. Zero.
Nothing.
Quality whatsoever. You can't even make an argument for the guy. Like Skylar White, you can make an argument. Like I can argue with you about whether she's a bad person or not, or bad wife or not. Like I can have that argument. Joffrey, nope, he's terrible.
Yep,
a terrible person.
That's a credit to Gleason, right?
Right. Jack Gleason did an incredible job. Amy Brenneman shows up in this. Somebody that I really thought in the mid-90s all the way through like the mid-2000s was going to have a much bigger career than she did. She did a couple of TV shows that she's very famous for. But I really like Amy Brenneman. All my daughter could talk about last night when she would come on screen was her hair. She's like, she's got so much, like her hair is just thick and full and gigantic. Just a lot of incredible people. And part of what makes the cast so good is the other part of what makes this film so great. And it is the characters they are portraying are written and put together so well. This movie is a character study in a lot of ways on more than one person, on more than two people for that matter, because we've got our two main. Oh, that's the other thing. We talk about the cast. We cannot leave out Pacino and De Niro, both doing an incredible job.
Mm-hmm.
Pacino is doing something I don't like, but we'll talk about why he's doing it in a few minutes because there's reason for it.
Yeah.
Pacino about this time in his career becomes a caricature of Pacino in some things. Devil's Advocate, which is a really, really weird movie. Al Pacino is playing a caricature of Al Pacino. And I think he meant to do that in that movie because he's playing, Satan and he's going over the top on everything and yelling and screaming. But that, Scent of a Woman, he's just taking Scent of a Woman is funny. It's taking Dog Day Afternoon or not. No, what's the one that he's in court? In the 70s. That was such a popular movie or such a great movie, such a great performance. And Justice for All. He takes a Justice for All and he dials it up to 11 and then he does Scent of a Woman. And he's like, I'm blind and I'm playing it as loud as I can in Scent of a Woman, which I think he ends up winning an Oscar for. Good for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a little cartoonish in this even, but we'll talk about why. De Niro. This might be my favorite De Niro performance.
I wouldn't argue against that. No, yeah, he's very good.
De Niro's done some incredible things. Vito Corleone,
mm-hmm.
The ability to go as a younger actor into the character of Vito Corleone that has been created out of whole cloth by Marlon Brando, a legend on screen, and create the same character that is richer and more detailed is an incredible feat. And I like Vito Corleone as done by De Niro. But Neil McCauley, and for that matter, Vincent Hanna, are both so intriguing
mm-hmm.
as characters because neither of them are what they should be. Vincent is not a good cop. He is not a moral cop. And Neil McCauley is not an evil criminal. And it's great.
They're great. Almost like mirror images of each other. Like,
oh yeah,
like Superman and Bizarro Superman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is filled with great characters. I'm a big fan of Stephen King. I think I've mentioned that on our podcast before. And one of the things I love about Stephen King is not so much his storytelling, although it's incredible. It is the way he builds characters. I think this movie does a great job of building an entire world of characters that are interesting, that you can kind of pick apart and pick at. Even guys like Van Zant, who is played by William Fisher, is an interesting character to kind of watch and understand who he is. Ralph, the guy that shows up for 5 minutes in the middle of the movie or near the end of the movie, that is sleeping with Pacino's wife.
I love that scene.
It's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much character in this person. Like you get so much out of this little tiny scene of him where he's trying to leave and he's very uncomfortable and God, he's just great.
Apologizing. He's like, I didn't know, man. I'm so sorry. He feels so used in that moment.
Xander Berkeley is that actor's name. He is he does a great job. And you can ball my wife. You can sit here in her ex-husband's house, but you cannot watch my TV. The characters are just rich. The relationships between characters, the relationship between Chris and Charlene, which is something that I don't know that you need in this movie. Like, I think it's part of what causes the biggest problem of this movie, which is an extended runtime, is that you get too much of this stuff.
There's a lot of stuff that's not needed. Yeah.
But an incredible character study between this married couple who is having money problems, because even though he makes huge money on these jobs that he does, he is blowing it all gambling, and that is causing problems at home with his family. I love the moment where they're arguing. When you first meet them and you first learn of this sort of tension, where he says, there's the door, leave the bank book and the keys. Like, you want to leave, but, Dominique stays here. Their son, that's a big deal, stays here. And you can leave. You can walk out the door whenever you want. You learn so much about these two characters in that one conversation. So the characters and the relationships are just kind of beautiful, are just kind of incredibly well done. It is, for the most part, Leo, a beautifully shot film.
Mm-hmm.
It is shot in that 235x1, which I love. It's very epic and cinematic, and Mann does a great job. Mann paints on his film. Like, he uses color in an incredible way. He does a great, and I say mostly, there are times I'm going to take Mann to task here in a few minutes. Not that he cares what some guy in South Texas thinks of him. But for the most part, beautifully shot. That final scene out on the airstrip at night could be boring. It could be like, okay, let's hurry up and get to the end of this. Like, let's get to the end. But it's not. It's so well done, so well shot. The use of light and the use of color, even in that scene, which is mostly a dark scene, is really incredible. Any thoughts on how this film looks?
I like, as you said, the wide scale and how epic was a good word for it. I think there's a lot of scenes like that, and I think it goes well with the story, but it's like Mann is trying to make everything really big. It's a big story. There's a lot going on. It's a big landscape. It's a huge city. These are significant characters and figures in their field. So it kind of all goes in hand, and it's fitting that the camera style is in the same style as the rest of the story that's being told.
Yeah, I agree. He really does. And shooting it in the 235 by 1 is a great way to go. And again, I think this is something that Nolan will later echo in his movies, because he loves IMAX, which again has this huge epic sort of feel. Every time you go into an IMAX sort of sequence in The Dark Knight or Inception or some of those Nolan movies, it feels bigger. It feels more epic. And I think that's what he's reaching out to. Is Mann didn't have this opportunity in 1995. He could just shoot in an aspect that gave it that feel.
I'm thinking about it. It really lends itself to one of my favorite scenes, which I'm sure is probably high up on your list as well. But the scene where it's the ruse by Neil and his crew to get Vincent and his crew out in the open, and they come out to the shipping dock, and they're like, that's our, going that way, and then looking that way, and they're looking all around them, and it's kind of like this big vast space, and there they are standing in this big vast space, and they're watching them from afar from their perches. It goes to show you this huge area. Who knows what they're looking at, what they're talking about. And they intentionally look one direction and then the other direction. They kind of spin around in a circle. So they're going, what are they looking at? So they come down to kind of get the same vantage point as them. And while they're trying to figure out what in the heck were they talking about, what were they looking at, And then, and then Vincent's like, you want to know what they were looking at?
You know what they're looking at?
Us. That's what they're looking at. We've been
LAPD.
Yeah, and that massive landscape and huge open space just kind of really, accentuates that scene greatly. So yeah, and that's one of my favorite scenes from the movie.
And it lends itself so well. The next thing on my list, and it's kind of a great sort of transition, is it lends itself really well. The scope of this movie lends itself really well to the action set pieces. I get bored. I get tired of close cropped, cut to death action sequences where you can't figure out where anybody is or who's hitting who or who's shooting at what or where everybody is. And man doesn't do that. Like everything is so expansive and so much room that you can tell what's going on and it looks grand. It looks good. And the action set pieces are incredible in this movie. The one I was just thinking of that transitioned me to this, I didn't even write down, but it's the drive-in movie theater. There's this little mini shootout at a drive-in movie theater. It would be a terrible scene if it were shot in 2024 by Marvel Studios, because it would be so cut to death and close cropped and it would be awful. But it's really a great look. It's so short, it's so quick, but it's a great looking scene because it's so expansive and you see everything as it's happening. Let's talk a little bit about, I wrote down 3 big action set pieces in this movie. The first one is the first heist, the armored truck heist. What a great way to start off a movie. And again, I keep going back to this, but this is Chris Nolan taking a page right out of this book and starting off a movie with this incredible action set piece. That's what they do in this movie, and Nolan absolutely just steals it for Dark Knight and starts his movie off with a big heist. That whole first scene is incredible. You learn everything about everybody pretty quickly. You learn that Waingro is new. It is just dropped into conversation in such a way that it feels organic. This is a guy that's nervous, working with a crew that he doesn't normally work with, and he wants to keep doing work with them because they're pulling down big jobs. And so he just kind of drops that in of, oh, you guys all work together. Well, I'd be down for other stuff. And you learn that just so organically in the midst of this really big tension building moment leading up to this big action set piece. Just very well constructed. And then the heist itself is very well done. Very, very well done. And real. Go ahead.
Yes. I'll agree with 90% of what you said. I don't want to get into what I don't agree with, what I disagree with, because it's going to be a key piece of our segment later about things we don't like about the movie. But yes, the scene itself, the opening scene and the opening heist, it kind of pushes you into what this movie and where this movie's going and who these characters are and how professional they are, how coordinated they are, intelligent criminals. They're not. This isn't some ragtag crew of guys that just put together and just starting off. These are professional guys, high level guys in their craft.
I agree. I love the realism of the fact that the guards have lost their hearing.
Yeah.
Because Waingro tells them to do something and they're not listening. They're not paying attention the way he wants. And one of the other guys, I think it is Tom Sizemore character, says, look at that stuff dribbling out of their ears.
It is Tom Sizemore. Yeah, it's really impressive because it's Chris that that sets the explosive on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember really being kind of impressed by when the explosion comes off. They're by a row of cars, and I don't know if it's a used car lot or something that's behind it.
Right,
And
and
you
it blows
see
out
the
the
rear
windows.
windshields, they all blow up in sequence as the explosion comes out. And you know, a lot of filmmakers would overlook that, or not think of doing something like that,
or would do it bigger and in a different way. Like I'm thinking Michael Bay in this doing the same action siege. We get a big fireball. We don't get that here. We get an explosion, but it's real. I mean, and it really has effect on the world around it. I get kind of tired in action movies of everybody that is shooting guns in close quarters and close to explosions, and like they're fine. There's a reason you have to wear protection when you go to shoot at the range. That's loud. It's not good on your ears. Bruce Willis lost hearing in one of his ears on the set of Die Hard because they fired a gun with blanks in it next to his head in either Die Hard or Die Hard with a Vengeance, because there's an elevator scene in there that I think may have been the culprit. But sound has an effect, and the fact that works into this movie and doesn't just work in, but is a plot point, is part of the story of this movie, is really incredible. I love the realism. That first heist is really, really a great way to start this film off.
Yeah, and it sets the tone on how Mann, I will say this, masterfully builds up suspense. Different scenes, and especially in the heists, like right off the bat. I mean, you think about it, and Neil comes in and steals that ambulance from the hospital without saying a word. We don't get any line from Neil's character during this whole process, and he's driving the ambulance. We still haven't heard him speak, and then you see the other characters. You see, like you said, Chirito picking up Waingro. And then you see Danny Trejo's character, I forget his name, and he's tailing the armored truck, and he's talking on the walkie-talkie and letting him know, okay, they're exactly where we're right on time, so that there's this big plan, and you see and everything is big and loud. The big truck that Sizemore and Waingro are in. And then the armored truck, and then the ambulance, and then it's just like cutting scenes and like converging. That something big is about to happen, but they just give you like little bits and pieces until it's right there, and then all of a sudden you see he pulls the truck back in, reverses in under the bridge, and then you see the armored truck pull in. You're like, oh man, he's gonna ram it, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's all happening right in front of you. But they build up to that, and they do that several times. Mann does that repeatedly throughout this movie, which really keeps you in it.
Well, and they trust he trusts his audience to put things together for themselves. I don't have to tell you everything. I don't have to spell everything out for you. You're gonna get it. You're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna come along with me. Man, more movies need to do this. More movies need to trust me as the film goer, as the film watcher. I realize that execs are afraid of the American people and think we're all so dumb that we have to have it spoon-fed to us. And to be fair, a lot of America might need that. I don't. I want to discover these things along with these moments without being spoon-fed to me. There's a beautiful movie, beautifully shot. One of the prettiest horror movies I've ever seen in my life came out on Max earlier, just at the end of last year. It is Salem's Lot. It is a reboot of that Stephen King property, Salem's Lot. It is a beautiful movie. The casting is incredible. It's terrible because it spoon feeds you every single thing. And it is so annoying that halfway through the movie, I'm like, I don't care how good they're doing with the production value and how good the actors are in this. I'm tired of you telling me every single little thing. It's terrible.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. but you just need to make sure you're not watching the movie with my sister. I was laughing a little while
Who's
ago.
that guy? What's he doing? Why are they doing that?
Yes.
Who's
That's
that
my
guy?
sister, and everybody knows somebody that's just like that. Don't take that person to those movies, because I've got two sisters, and my sister's not going to watch this, but even if she does, she's not going to know which one I'm talking about, so it's okay. But yeah, my sister's like that. Well, who's that? And why is he doing that? And where did he come from? And what? It's just like, just watch the movie. You'll find out.
I know it's become in vogue, but we were on the front end of it. We have to turn on subtitles for everything in our house. And the reason for that was I was very tired of my wife going, what did they say? And then I would miss dialogue because I had to tell her what they just said. And finally, we started turning on the subtitles. I realize that's a big thing now. Lots of people use the subtitles. I guarantee you, we were on the front end of that because I was so sick of missing things in the movie because I had to tell her what had just happened. That's that first heist. Then, of course, the big action set piece in this whole movie, the sort of fulcrum of this movie. There are two halves to this movie, and it kind of teeters on the bank heist and the shootout on the streets of LA. We've already talked some about that, certainly with the sound design and some of that kind of stuff. Just incredibly done. This is used, parts of this are used to train military and police officers because of the way that they use cover fire, the way that they reload. It is a great depiction of how this should work, that they actually use this in the military and police departments.
Yep,
to train
and the
people.
Marines. I read that in the Marines as well because of the way they retreat while under fire. They said it's like textbook. Yep, and reloading magazines. Yep.
I love the bank heist scene. The way that they explain things very carefully. They don't threaten anybody's lives. They don't shoot guns in the air. They don't yell and scream at people or terrorize people. In fact, they try to do the opposite. They try to keep everybody as calm as possible. We're not here for your money. We're here for the bank's money. Your money is insured. You're not going to lose anything. So just hang out with us for a few minutes and we'll be out of your way. Sort of the way it works. It's kind of antithetical to everything that we've seen in bank robbery heists on film, because it's always got to be a high tension sort of moment. Well, it's still tense, but it doesn't have to be manufactured tension, which we get in a lot of these bank heist movies. And then the shootout on the street, it just goes on forever, but you're legitimately worried about everybody in the scene. Ted Levine's character, who I talked about earlier, dies in this scene. Of course, we lose Dennis Haysbert's character, and Tom Sizemore also dies, which I got something on in a few minutes. But like, it's not just no-name cops that get shot. We actually lose a guy that we've been with, that we've been spending time with. There's actual consequences for this heist and this shootout. And I think that's impressive. I think it's well done, and it's just a very well shot scene. The use of music, the use of sound, the use of everything is just incredible.
It is. You know, the way it goes from the bank to the car, and then them, you know, trying to get away, the chase, the shooting Breeden, and then they have to abandon the car, and then they're trying to stay together as much as they can and make their way, and then the parking lot of the grocery store, you know, and then into another car, and then trying to make their escape there. And, you know, of course, Neil and Chris do make their escape. Sizemore's Chorito gets split up, and then we see his demise there, but, you know, in a very dramatic fashion. And the cops just and the mass of people just scattering and screaming. You see different, you know, kids and shoppers in the parking lot, and shopping carts are, you know, being pushed out, and groceries flying. I mean, it's very real and very dramatic. One thing that really struck me that had to have taken a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it was influence from this scene. You ever seen the movie Baby Driver?
No, I have not. I know what
Oh,
you're talking about, but I have not seen it.
you got to watch that movie. But there is the final. Well, it's not the final chase scene, but the chase scene where everything just kind of blows up on the last big heist. So much like that in that it's in the city. It goes, to different scenes, goes through a parking lot, lots of people. There's, switching cars, and just, the chaos that's around it. It is so much like this that I didn't realize it when watching Baby Driver, and I've seen Baby Driver probably 2 or 3 times. It's a great film. You should watch it. But now, having in retrospect and having seen Heat recently twice, looking at that scene and then thinking about Baby Driver, I'm like, they had to have taken influence from this scene in Heat because there's so many elements that are in there.
The final action set piece I have written down is kind of a dual one. It's the hotel all the way into the airfield, sort of the finale of this thing. I love the moment where he busts into Waingro's room and the bit of conversation they have.
Look at me.
Yeah, look at me. Out of character for Neil McCauley, or is it? I would love to get into the Neil McCauley character is so interesting to me, and I think that's why I love De Niro more than Pacino in this particular movie. They both do a great job, but I think he does this great job of a guy who has said one thing throughout the whole movie. We hear it 2 or 3 times about not growing attached to things and keeping yourself distanced and all he does through this movie is go against that advice. It seems like over and over and over and over again, he gets like his original, where he is when she sits down at the bar with him and asks about the book. His original attitude of, who are you, lady? Why do you care so much what I'm reading or what I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who you need to be, Neil. If you're going to be the guy you think you are, that's who you have to be. When you eschew that and move into, over to the seat next to her and begin engaging her in conversation, you are abandoning the things that you say you value. And he does that several times in this movie. He calls her back after they've had this one night together. He's the one that initiates. He calls her, finds her, and calls her. What are you doing, man? Aren't you the one that said you don't do this? This is not how things work. You get on to Chris, Val Kilmer's character, because he has attached himself to something. This is the first time we hear about do not attach do not have anything in your life that you cannot walk away from. And he's kind of chiding Chris for having that in his bare, blank apartment where he has no attachments. And then from that point on, it seems like when these opportunities come up for him to live that out, he doesn't do it. He's home free. At the end of this movie, he can drive to the airport, get on a charter plane, and leave. Scot-free. All the money to himself. Everything worked out. And he's even got the girl, which he shouldn't even have because of the way.
Right.
And he cannot leave this Waingro thing hanging in the wind. He has to close that loop. He has to clean up that thing and go back, and it's his demise.
And that's why he loses. That's why he loses. And flip the coin. We talked about mirror images, and we talked about that scene with Vincent Hanna and Neil McCauley when they're in the diner and they meet each other and they have that,
which is next on my list. Like the scene is a big part of what makes this movie great. So let's transition right into that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so in that scene, they have this conversation, and at the end, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you, but they touch on that point, and Neil says to Vincent, the flip side of the flip side of the coin is when they're talking about if it comes down to I have to make a choice, you're going down, buddy. He goes, the flip side of that is if you have me cornered, you're going down. But when they talk about their lives and their lifestyles, and he mentions, I've got no attachments, I have this motto of having to, there's nothing in my life that I can't walk away from. And Neil, interestingly, it's Neil that points out to Vincent that he has to do the exact same in order to keep up with a guy like him. That if he can't do that with his life, that he's never going to be able to keep up with a guy like Neil McCauley. And the interesting thing on that is in that final, a scene and that result we're talking about where it ends up Neil can't walk away from. Vincent has something that he's dealing with at that very moment that would very, very much, you wouldn't blame the guy if he didn't walk away from that situation and stayed right where he was.
Right.
But what did he do? He walked away from it and went to go get the bad guy. And that's what happened.
You're right. That's incredible. That's incredible. The scene in the diner, now that we're on to it, there are scenes in movies that I think transcend the movie themselves. The one that I will use an example, I could go through a few, but the one I will use it as an example. One of my top 5 movies is Sixth Sense. I love the movie. I think it's incredible. The scene in the car between Haley Joel Osment and Toni Collette at the end of the movie, where they talk about the lady in the bike wreck. She's standing by my window. And then they get into a conversation about his grandma, her mother. It is a powerful scene that makes the movie 10 times better. If you removed that scene from the movie, I don't think the movie is in my top 5 anymore. I think the whole movie suffers greatly from not having that scene. There are scenes that just transcend and make the movie something incredible, something special into something incredible. This scene in the diner between De Niro and Pacino, between Neil McCauley and Vincent Hanna, is one of those scenes. If that scene doesn't exist in this movie, we're not talking about it right now. It is not a movie that I want to discuss. It is an incredible scene. And there are people that deride this scene because, they're not really, you never see them in the frame together. It doesn't matter. They are acting off of each other. They are playing off of each other. It took very few takes to get this scene. In fact, both De Niro and Pacino apparently did not want to rehearse the scene because they wanted to be uncomfortable with each other. And when you're acting on stage, rehearsal breeds comfortability. The more times I can hear you or see you or watch what you're doing, the more comfortable I can become in what you're doing and what I'm going to do based on that. They didn't want that. They wanted to be uncomfortable. It reads in the scene. Incredible scene. One of the best scenes put on film. Stop. Just incredible. The way that they understand each other. They are on opposite sides of the same coin, and they get that. Neither one of them will praise the other person, and yet every bit of their conversation they respect and admire each other, and you can see it.
Yep.
It's just an incredible scene from 2 incredible actors. There's a reason everybody gets excited about this scene. It had been years and years coming to have these 2 guys in the same scene with each other. You could have this one scene and the rest of the movie could be trash around it. And I think that it would be worth having this movie just for this scene. It's an incredible, incredible scene, an incredible conversation, and an incredible premise. The idea that the cop who is investigating the criminal would chase him down and invite him to have a cup of coffee so that they could both get a read on each other is just, it's incredible. Other movies try to do things like this and they don't do it near as well as this movie does it. I think it is one of the best scenes ever made, period, in all of Hollywood. Thoughts?
I mean, I can't disagree. It's the reason, as you said, it's the reason this movie got the attention that it did was because these two, I mean, these are big draws, and to have them in one scene together. I read some nonsense about how there may have been some negotiated things about how they had to have an equal amount of lines because they didn't want to favor one guy over the other. I don't know if any of that was true, and I don't think it's ever been, confirmed or not confirmed or whatever. But just the back and forth between the two of them, the telling of each side of the same coin, and how if you flip that coin, it's almost the exact same thing for each of them. And then just being like, this is the moment that you kind of get the whole point of the movie, the theme, the underlying theme of this movie. They're telling it to you right here. And it applies to real life. It applies to real life. If you're going to be a professional criminal and you're going to get away with it for an extended period of time, you have to live a certain way. And the guys out there that we don't think about often that have to apprehend these guys that are like that and find them, they have to be equally non-committed to everything else to be able to catch those types of guys. And that's real. I mean, that is 100% how it works.
Well, and you talk about it being two sides of the same coin. I love that we do get this really so Neil, De Niro's character, believes and espouses things that he is not. Like he is confused about the person that he is, but he does not think he is. Vincent Hanna, on the other hand, thinks he is confused about who he is, but he's not. He knows who he is. He understands who he is more when he talks about, there is something amazing about Pacino's delivery when he's talking about his marriage, about how they are both on the downside of a marriage that is disintegrating, or however he says it. The delivery is beautiful because he knows that it is inevitably headed that way.
That's his third.
He knows that he can stop it, and he has no desire to do that. Like, this is falling apart, and I could make some changes and make sure it's not, and I'm not going to do that, and she's not either, and we know that, and we understand that about each other, and this is my third one. It's amazing that Neil is fooling himself into thinking that he's somebody he's not, whereas Vincent Hanna is fooling himself in that he doesn't. He knows more. He understands more about himself than he thinks he does. It's really incredible.
Really interesting. Yep.
And it lays out the stakes for the end of the movie. We realize in that moment that one of them is going to have to die. So somebody is going to lose. This is not going to be a situation where both win. It can't happen. And so I think it sets up the end incredibly. It is worth all 3 hours of this movie to watch that scene. Even if it were terrible, and it's not, it's a really good movie, but even if it were terrible, I think it would be worth it to watch that scene. Anything else that makes this film great on your list?
I had 3 scenes. So the scene of the, what they're looking at us. They're looking at us.
So good.
That's
so good.
Yeah. I just love that scene and that moment, that realization. And then the second scene is Ralph, which you can ball my wife, you can hang out in her ex-husband's, whatever apartment is like, but you can't watch my TV.
You can't watch my television.
Yeah. and then the diner scene with Vincent
Incredible.
and Neil just sitting there, incredible scene. Those three things to me make this movie worth watching. But
so let's talk about the things we usually say what you would change. Let's just talk about the problems that we have with this movie, because this movie has problems.
Yeah.
I'm going to start small and go to the big.
Okay.
I have small issues with certain things in this movie. Neil McCauley, you are a lifelong criminal.
Mm-hmm.
You are careful. You are incredibly careful.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me, Neil McCauley, how Waingro gets away from you at the diner?
Mm-hmm.
You were standing over his body. I realize the cops are there. You can't take him out like you want to in that very moment. But how did that guy slip you?
How do you take your eyes off of him? How do you look away from the guy? I'm glad you said this, because this is one of the things on my list. How do you look away from a guy you are about to murder? You're about to kill him, and you take your eyes off of him?
Yeah.
Like, even for a second? Why?
No.
There's no need. You stare down at the guy with the barrel of your gun aimed right at him and make sure he's not moving anywhere. Unexplainable.
How does a guy disappear from between your feet?
Right.
It does not make any sense.
Yes.
Another small thing. Again, these are small things, and we're going small to big. Another small thing. Is that the longest walk from a bank lobby to a car that has ever existed?
That is really long. Yeah. That's a small thing, though. But yes, I agree.
They should be long gone by the time Vincent and the rest of the cops get there. They should be miles away from there. I realize they're not wanting to run. You don't want to draw any attention. There's a deleted scene where they're casing the bank just before they do the job. Haysbert, who is the new driver that has been put in this situation, says, "Do you want me to open the doors?" And he says, "No, I don't want anything that would draw attention." And so I understand, which, by the way, you're going to draw attention. You have you have rifles, assault rifles, and huge giant duffel bags on your back. You're going to draw some attention, man. But the walk from the lobby to the car just takes longer than it should. Another small thing. This is a little bigger. I have a problem every time I watch this movie. Vincent Hanna does not take the shot to kill Chris in any world, in any imaginable place. That guy is holding a child. He is holding a second grader or a first grader up. There is no world where a seasoned detective would take the shot to take out Tom Sizemore's character in that moment. Just wouldn't happen. There is no way you can justify that decision in the script to me. It has to be done a different way. If I'm making this movie, there has to be a different way that Chris gets taken out of this. Not Chris. Trinas, the Tom Sizemore character gets taken out, because there's no way that anybody is taking that shot.
I would agree. I would also say that I had a hard time believing that Chirito, Tom Sizemore's character, picks up a child and uses it as a shield, when in this movie we saw them at the dinner, we saw them together, and he is a father, and it looks like he's and it looks like he's a loving father, and a father of two girls, and it's a girl. It's a little girl.
Yep.
I don't see that character picking up a little girl to use as a human shield, even though you're thinking, there's no way they're going to shoot at me so that she's not in danger, because I'm not going to I'm not going to shoot her or hurt her. Even so, a loving father like he's portrayed as is not taking that chance,
which makes for a richer scene. If he picks this little girl up, realizes what he's doing, you get a flash of his own daughter.
Yes.
He puts her down, and then Vincent shoots him. That's better. That's so much better.
Yes.
All the way around. It adds a layer to Vincent and to Tom Sizemore's character that you don't get.
Yes.
That would be an incredible way to just kind of paper over that and make it all work. All right, some bigger stuff. There is some dodgy looking green screen work in this film. I don't know how a really, really good movie director with an incredible eye for detail doesn't look at that scene between De Niro and Amy Brenneman near the beginning of the movie where they're standing on the balcony and the green screen shots he has of the city down below them or around them and says, yeah, that's good. That'll work. People will buy that. People will believe that. Looks great to me. There's a million different ways you can shoot a balcony scene. You don't need green screen shots of the city down below them. There's no motion. The headlights of the cars aren't moving. There's so many problems with the green screen work in some of the parts of this film. And I can't believe that a guy like Michael Mann, with the eye that he has for filmmaking, watched those scenes and went, no, that's good. That'll work. That looks great. Just don't buy it. Can't buy it.
Okay.
The big problem that we both have in this film, the one that we may spend a little bit of time working on, is this film is bloated. This film has pacing issues, and this film has way too much going on in it. It is nearly 3 hours long. I can sit through 3 hours of Lord of the Rings. You keep my attention the whole time. Heat does not need to be a 3-hour movie. We need to cut about 45 minutes out of this movie. This needs to be a solid 2 hours, and we're done. And where some of those cuts have to come, we don't need the stepdaughter stuff from Vincent Hanna. I love Natalie Portman. I think she does a great job in this film, but we don't need that. We don't need any of it.
I agree. I don't think she needs to be in this movie at all. I will say that in just in the last hour that we've been talking, I think, because I wondered why she was in it even to begin with. But I answered my own question a little while ago when I said that Vincent Hanna walked away from something that we wouldn't blame him for not walking away from. And that was, her having attempted to commit suicide, and she's in the hospital and he's there with his wife and they're in the waiting room and, waiting to see how she is. They get word that she's okay, and he leaves. He gets the call and he leaves. He leaves her there without seeing his stepdaughter, I guess you would call her.
Right.
And I guess that's because it hadn't dawned on me until our conversation right now that was significant that he walked away from that when Neil couldn't walk away from what he got entwined in. So that's, I think, is the sole reason that she's in this movie, because I couldn't figure it out prior to that. I could not figure out the reason why her being in there. But even so, it's still not necessary.
I would go so far to say that all of the scenes of Hannah's life outside of being a detective, we could lose. We could lose all the Justine stuff. Like, I love the Ralph scene, but we could lose it. I love the scene where he comes home and she's chiding him because she made dinner 4 hours ago, and he's like, I got 2 dead bodies on the sidewalk on Hollywood Boulevard, so I'm sorry if the chicken got a little cold. Or overcooked. That's what he says, overcooked. I love the scene. I love what he's expressing and what he's saying there, and how he's going about communicating what is important to him. But I don't need it. I don't need any of that. I'll tell you another thing that really, really comes out of nowhere, and there's never any resolution for, Leo. Waingro is a serial killer that kills prostitutes.
Yeah.
Do we need that? Do we need any of that?
We don't. We don't need it at all. We don't need Waingro. When I'll let you go through your list first, but
interesting. I want to talk about that. I like the addition of Waingro, but this idea, this extra plot point.
yeah,
What did we need to hate him more? Like, we hate him. We don't like him. He's running counter to a guy that we like in Neil McCauley, and exists in the film. Opposed to guys we like. We don't need a reason to hate him. We already got that.
So that brings up a question. That's part of my issue, and maybe I just don't understand the way things work in law enforcement. But is Vincent Hanna, is he a special crimes detective, or is he a homicide detective, or what is he? Because it seems like he's everything. He's everywhere. He just, with a phone call, has helicopters picking him up and taking him somewhere and dropping him off at a car so he can get in the car and follow Neil McCauley to and pull him over to take him to the diner. There's multiple scenes where he's in a helicopter. And I just can't
my understanding is that he is the lead of a major crimes unit. In the LAPD, which an armored car with 3 deaths is going to be a major crime. A serial killer of prostitutes would be a major crime. When he first walks onto the scene there at the murder of the prostitute at the hotel, at the motel, I'm like, why? He's got work. He doesn't need extra work. He does not need this case does not need to be him.
That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, and there's no payoff to that. Like, we learn this about Waingro, but it's not like it comes up later and ties back to anything. It really feels like Mann just felt like we needed to see the Nazi tattoo on his chest, and we needed to know that he was killing these young sex workers so that we had more of a reason to hate him. And I'm like, I don't need it. I don't need that.
Don't need it.
And it's extra. There's a scene, Leo, I didn't write down time codes. I probably should have, but watching it last night, I was like, what is this? Why are we even here? It's only about 30 or 45 seconds. But if you do that enough, you make a 2-hour movie into a 2-hour and 45-minute movie. There's a scene where Hannah walks into one of them. I can't even remember which one it is, but I think it's Hannah. Walks into his apartment. It's blue. It's the blue scene. It's all blue. He walks out and he looks out the window. There is no dialogue. There is nothing we learn. It's a 45-minute scene of him alone in his living room. We get no information. It's just there. It's pretty. It's something Michael Mann loves to do because it's using this blue and color in a really interesting way, but nothing. We learn nothing from the scene. And this is how you make a bloated movie. And this movie is bloated. This movie has too much stuffed into it and going on, and it spills out over the edges. We can lose some stuff here. Now, I know you feel the same way, but you might have some different things that we don't need. You mentioned we don't need Waingro. I love Waingro, so go ahead. I don't love Waingro, but I love the plot point that is Waingro. So go ahead.
Waingro is just one part of what I hate the most about this movie.
Okay.
Mann manages to, and it's the whole coin flip thing and the mirror images of these two characters. Vincent Hanna is incredibly smart, dedicated, and disciplined in what he does, right? He's focused. Everything else doesn't really matter to him. He's focused on his job and what he does, and he's focused at doing it the very best he can. Neil McCauley is supposed to be the exact same thing. There's lots of things that tell us this, that he's calculating, he's smart, he's very careful. He can walk away in an instant. The heist where he hears the guy across the street drop something where they're hidden in it, and he's just like, he freezes, he stops, and then he calls, he's like, we're walking away. And they're like, well, I'm almost there. And he's like, I said we're walking away. And it was the right call because they get arrested then and there that night. if he doesn't walk away from it. Everything we see about Neil McCauley, he's smart, calculating, intelligent, doesn't take chances, and that's why he's successful. Well, that's why Waingro is a total mistake, is a total it's not McCauley. It's out of character. And it's because of the very fact, one, we learn from the very beginning, they don't know him. Right. He's not someone that McCauley can trust. The only reason he's in there is because Mann wants to have something later where he goes after to correct a mistake. But McCauley doesn't make that kind of obvious mistake. That's not who he is. And it really bothers me. They don't know this guy. They don't know his history, yet they just drop him in. They didn't even meet him before the job because he introduces himself to Chirito as he's getting in the truck. Right. And Chirito's already annoyed with him. Hey, Slick, could you stop talking? And then on top of that, the great scene, remember I said I agree with 90% of what you're saying about that first heist being really great?
Yes.
Tell me, what is Waingro's job in that scene? What is his job? What is he there for? Why did they need to take the chance of having an extra guy there, that it was so important to have that guy that it was worth the risk of bringing in someone you didn't know, you'd never met? That's so not Neil McCauley. He was absolutely unnecessary. That if you watch the scene, he's outside watching the 3 guards that are in the armored truck.
Right.
But
yes.
But Neil McCauley himself is standing there, and so is Chirito. So you're telling me that Neil and Chirito couldn't handle those 3 unarmed, shocked guards on their own? They could have done that very easily while Chris is over there retrieving the bonds that they were stealing from inside. And I still can't think of the character's name. I'm sorry, but Trejo's the lookout. He's totally unnecessary for that job. So why is he there? It's never explained to us. And it's exactly the type of move that Neil McCauley would never do. And that's not... Go ahead.
And we just gave him flack, Neil McCauley flack, for the way he lost Waingro. But if you're going to kill Waingro, why are you meeting in a diner?
Yeah. Yes. So
hey, and you've got a built-in reason, like, we need to talk to you. We have money that belongs to you. Meet us here at this warehouse, and we'll divide up. We'll give you your part of the money, and then you kill him there. Like, why are you meeting him in it? Which, if it's 2024, the police show up because they start beating this guy at the table, slam his head into the table. There's not one customer that looks up and Tom Sizemore kind of intimidates him to mind his own business, but that's out of character. Not out of character. I think it's in character from McCauley. I don't think McCauley is as careful as he thinks he is.
Obviously he's not, but he's painted to be the flip side of Vincent Hanna, and he just keeps making mistakes throughout this movie that are very uncharacteristic of that guy that we're supposed to buy that he is. Now
a counterpoint to your argument, they do go and pick up the driver, Dennis Haysbert, on the fly, day of the job, when Trejo calls them and says, I got cops all over me, which, by the way, is a case of you trusting me a little too much, Michael Mann. Like, I got there in the long run, but I did not realize. I thought he was really being tailed by the cops. He is actually being run by Waingro to cause problems in McCauley's heist. At the behest of Van Zandt. Like, it gets really messy right in that one moment. There's a lot in that one moment that gets real messy.
You're adding to my argument here, because the second thing you already mentioned, how does he let Waingro get away?
Yeah,
he's standing right by his feet. Okay, that's another inexplicably dumb move.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, and the most disturb, or the most non-McCauley, if we're supposed to buy who McCauley is the need to go after Waingro to begin with. If you look at this, if you think about this, Waingro is a pawn. Waingro is a nobody. Waingro isn't Waingro. Yes, he's the rat, but who sought him out? Who was the rat working for? And that was Van Zant. And he got Van Zant. He got him. He got the guy that was responsible. Waingro wasn't responsible. Waingro was a tool. He's a nobody. He's a pawn. Van Zant was the guy. And he went and he got him. He had no reason to go after Waingro other than maybe pride. But you know what? McCauley has how much money in that bag?
Right.
Are you telling me he couldn't just leave some money with Nate, John Voight's character, and say, take care of Waingro for me? You know, he's gonna go to prison. You know, he's not gonna get, he's in custody already. He's protected, but he's in custody. He's gonna serve time. It's gonna be pretty easy to get the guy while he's not even there. It's just not smart. And we're supposed to buy that Neil McCauley is the opposite, the equal of Vincent Hanna on the other. And there's all these little details in what he's done that show us that he's absolutely not. And they could have still made him that without all these little extra things. Like Waingro wasn't necessary. Waingro could have been just a guy that ratted on him and not a mistake that he made on a job.
The decision to go after Waingro at the end makes no sense. Even for a guy that's not careful, who thinks he's careful but is not careful. You don't even have to be a careful guy. There are moments like, hey, you know this guy is working with the cops. You know the cops are on him, waiting for you to show up. You purposely walk into a trap. That's not even, you don't even have to be a careful guy to not do that. And then when you steal the security guy outfit, you're walking through the lobby, you notice that these are not cops working, or these are not front desk agents working the front desk because they got shotguns. Which, by the way, what was the LAPD's plan? Are they really going to open fire with pump shotguns in the middle of the lobby if Neil McCauley shows up? That ain't happening. But anyway, it doesn't make sense. It is the plot point where you just go, huh? Why? Why is this guy that important? You got your money, you got your girl, you got your way out. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah. And the girl could have been the thing and would have made more sense to me of what he couldn't walk away from. Right. And it wasn't the girl, truthfully. It wasn't Edie. It was Waingro that he couldn't walk away from. And then to take this further, I still got two more things that make McCauley not the smart guy that we're supposed to believe he is.
Okay.
When he walks out, he could still get away. Even though Vincent is coming down the back of the hotel, the crowd is going against Vincent. There's lots between he barely gets a glimpse of the girl. First of all, how did he know a girl sitting in a car meant, that's Neil McCauley, that's definitely his girlfriend? He has no way of knowing that, but he makes a beeline for it, right? But still, nonetheless, he's still far away. He's got people running against him. He's got paramedics. And here's the key thing. He's got a fire truck coming from the other direction that gets in between him and Neil as he's trying to make his way. Neil stands there for, I don't know how many seconds, watching him. Okay, 12 seconds, watching him approach, looking at Edie, looking at Vincent, looking at Edie, looking at Vincent, and then deciding I'm busted. I got to make a run for it. I can't, I have to sacrifice Edie. Why? You're standing right next to the car. Get in the car,
and go the other direction.
Away. And you can go the other direction. You know how I know you can go the other direction? Because the fire truck came from that direction. So obviously there's a way in and out the other side. Get in the car and drive off, buddy.
This was Abigail. Abigail last night, as we're watching this movie, is going, get in the car. Get in the car. Get in the car and drive away. You have a car. He doesn't have a car.
Yes.
Get in a car. I said 12 seconds. It's 42. There is 42 seconds there when he recognizes that Hannah is coming for him and that he has to walk away. So it is 12 seconds to make the decision and 30 seconds to walk away.
He could have got away. Easy.
He could have. You're right. I mean, you're right. He could have.
And the last thing, it's
yes,
just the very last thing. The final shootout, the final scene. Why did Neil decide to step out and take his shot when the light was on from the overpassing plane? Why did he choose to step out into the light? Why not use darkness? Better yet, why not circle back around the whatever that brick square building is that he could circle around and come from behind him, where even in that case the light doesn't matter. Now, I mean,
double back. Like when Hannah's looking for you among these buildings, you double back and you go back the other way you guys just came from, and pick a beanie and go to the building, and you're good.
Yes. Instead, he did the stupidest thing he could have done. He stepped out in the light exactly at the exact timing as the light comes, so that Vincent can see the shadow, turn, shoot, end of story. I'll hold your hand as you take your last breath because I respect you so much. You were an idiot.
I told you I wasn't going back. Yeah. You're right. You're right. I don't know about the Waingro thing. I don't know that I like the Waingro as a plot point, because you're right. You drilled a lot of holes in that. I do like Kevin Gage's Kevin Gage? I think I got that right.
Kevin Gage, yeah.
I do like the portrayal. By the way, Kevin Gage went to prison in the 2000s. The actor actually went to prison, and in prison was known as Waingro. He was that guy in prison. But you're right. I like Kevin Gage. I like the performance, but you're right. As a plot point, it doesn't make a ton of sense. In fact, it may not make any sense at all. You got anything else that you would change about this movie?
We already talked about Natalie Portman. I love Natalie Portman, but she doesn't belong in this movie. What was it's another nitpick small thing, but I think you and I talked about it. The scene with Chris where he comes to pick up Lauren, to meet with Lauren, and she steps out on the balcony and the cops are watching, and she does her little motion with her hand, and I'm like, really? The cops aren't going to see that or notice that? And really, the cops are going to let him get away because his ID doesn't... This guy's name is John. It's not Chris. All right, let him go. Yeah.
Worst cops ever.
Yeah.
I thought they had him when they were like, stop him anyway. Pick him up anyway. When you pick somebody up, you don't just ask for their ID and go, all right, all checks out. You pull them out of the car. You look them in the eye. You are you kidding me? A haircut? And you guys can't fight. You worst cops ever. That's as bad as stormtroopers. These are not the droids you're looking for. That's terrible. You guys are terrible at your job. You should quit. Awful. Yeah. One thing I would like to see, if I were to make this movie, I would do one big thing. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, that I would do differently. I would have shot this movie, but as I shot this movie, I would have added, it was 107 days worth of shooting apparently on this movie, which is a lot, but it's a big movie. I would have added another week or two, and I would have shot the same movie and flipped the actors. And 2 years later, I would have released Heat again with Pacino playing Neil McCauley and De Niro playing Vincent Hanna. I would have made the movie and released it. And then a year later, I would have released another movie that was the same movie with those guys flipped. That's a big thing. That's a crazy thing to do, but I would love to see this movie with them taking the opposite characters and doing this again. I think it'd be fascinating. I think it'd be incredible.
I agree. I think I would have loved to see that. And I think that was a marketing opportunity that they could have really capitalized on. Imagine the DVD sales and Blu-ray sales to sell the box set that has, the flip side. And then, as dumb as Mann makes Macaulay seem, if you look at some of the things and notice some of the things that I noticed after watching it, a couple of times, De Niro, the reason why we have a hard time buying that he's this stupid is because of how good De Niro is.
He's good.
So good. Very good.
So incredible. Just, I really think this might be my favorite De Niro performance.
Yeah.
He's just so good. How it could have been different. So here's the thing. There's not a lot of casting problems with this movie, and there are two reasons why there are not a lot of casting rumors. When this movie was written, Pacino and De Niro signed on almost immediately after they read the script. De Niro first, and then he handed it off to Pacino, and Pacino loved it and signed on to it. When you have De Niro and Pacino in 1994, whenever this movie is getting made, and you go to get other people to fill out your movie cast, you don't have to go to multiple people because it's a movie that's going to have Pacino and De Niro in it. The reason this cast is this good is because those two guys were already attached and everybody else wanted to be attached to the same project that those two guys were attached to. So there's not a lot of casting issues here or casting rumors. The other thing that makes this movie kind of there's not a lot of casting problems is there is a whole nother version of this movie that exists.
Mm-hmm.
It is called LA Takedown. It is a made-for-TV movie. It is this movie. Michael Mann had this idea. He was actually going to make it a TV series. Nobody picked up the pilot, so he reshuffled his TV series and shot some extra footage and created a TV movie called LA Takedown. Michael Rooker plays one of the cops on Hannah's team. He doesn't play Hannah, but he plays one of the cops, one of those guys. Waingro, the guy that we spent so much time talking about, Waingro is actually played by Xander Berkeley, who shows up later in Heat as Ralph. He is Ralph. He is also, you may look at him and see Ralph. Heck, you may look at him and see Waingro because you love LA Takedown. I look at that actor every time I look at that actor, and I see John Connor's stepdad, or foster dad in T2. That's who that guy is. I think he's actually Edward Furlong's foster dad, as far as I'm concerned. So a whole nother version of this movie exists about 10 years earlier, and you have Pacino and De Niro attached to it first. So there's not a lot of casting issues. There is one thing that I ran across, and Leo, you may have some more. Val Kilmer was not the first person they approached to play Chris. It was originally supposed to be Keanu Reeves. But Keanu Reeves was doing Hamlet. He was doing Shakespeare in Canada. The thing I find most interesting about this story is not that Val Kilmer could have been replaced or could have been superseded by Val Kilmer, but it is that a professional theater group wanted 1994 Keanu Reeves to be in Shakespeare. I don't look at Keanu Reeves. I love him. He's a great guy. He's fun and he does a great job. But in 1994, Keanu Reeves would not have struck me as this is a guy that does Shakespeare really well. He might. I remember Dracula. I don't think his accent's on point for some Shakespeare. That's amazing to me. But we could have had Keanu Reeves as Chris in this movie. It almost happened if he had not been doing Hamlet in Canada. I think it was in Manitoba.
Nothing against Keanu. I think he's great in some of the things that he's done, but I'm glad we got Val Kilmer as Chris.
Oh, yeah.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the one thing that I do have, and I mentioned it earlier, something I was going to touch on of something that exactly you said. You mentioned Ted Levine
Yes.
being in the movie and the role of Bosco, and how he showed some of his acting capability outside of what he had been known for, which was Wild Bill in Silence of the Lambs, right?
Yep.
Well, guess what? He was actually first considered or cast for. They approached him for the role of Waingro. He was originally supposed to be Waingro, but when they offered him that part, he declined it, and he declined it because he didn't want to
like
be
Buffalo Bill.
type. He didn't want to be typecast.
Love it.
He didn't want to be
Smart
typecast.
guy.
Yep, really smart.
Smart guy. And he would take this. By the way, this character, you get so little of him, but this character is ultimately the blueprint that he will build the captain for Monk on. It is the same look, it's the same hairstyle, it's the same mustache. Ted Levine has a very recognizable sort of vocal pattern, but anytime I watch him in this movie after I've watched Monk, I'm like, he's just doing Leland. This is exactly what he will use 10, 15 years from now to create this character of Leland in Monk. If you've never seen Monk, Ted Levine is a regular in Monk. He is the police captain, and he's great at it. I'm so happy for that guy. There are guys that are really, really good actors that unfortunately their most famous thing that they do is early on, and I feel bad for them. John Goodman almost fell into that as Dan Connor on Roseanne. Luckily, he's done some other stuff, and he's shown us what a great actor he could be. Ted Levine is one of those guys. And then the other one that I always think of, I had it in my mind and then I lost it. Is Ed O'Neill. Ed O'Neill got caught by Al Bundy. He's a really, really good actor.
Oh, yeah.
But he was Al Bundy, and thank God Modern Family came along and gave him an opportunity to do something and be something different so that he won't always be remembered as Al Bundy. But those three guys are guys that almost ended up in things that are ended up typecast as guys that you never would have seen what great actors they are. I'm very happy for Ted Levine.
I'm glad you mentioned Ed O'Neill. And yeah, Modern Family was, I think that was a defining moment in his career. But
definitely,
definitely Al Bundy was his start, and that's what he was known for a long time. But have you ever seen Dutch? I loved him in Dutch.
Yes. Yeah,
I just love that movie. I just love that movie, but I loved him in Dutch.
I love Dutch. It is what convinced me that he's a lot better actor than just Al Bundy.
Yes.
Is Dutch.
That's where I was getting at. Yeah.
Love Dutch. He also was in a version of Dragnet in the early 2000s. It should have been really good. It's right when police procedurals were becoming a huge thing with CSI and all of that kind of stuff. It was becoming big. And they rebooted Dragnet with him playing Joe Friday. And Ethan Embry was his partner, the young cop that he was bringing along. But it was terrible. Like, it should have been good because you had two guys, and it was right at the right time when police procedurals were good. I can't even get through the first episode of it. I've tried to watch it. I can't even get through the first episode of it. Maybe it gets better later on. Probably not. It got canned after one season, I think. But I had really hoped that Ed O'Neill would be better in that. Or he was great. It wasn't his fault. He did a great Joe Friday. I love Ed O'Neill. I love Ted Levine. Mm-hmm. I love John Goodman. These are three guys that I really love and really think they are way more talented than people give them credit for. All three of them. I think they're very, very talented. Here's something that might have been different and should have been different. And I know we're in agreement on this. There is a scene that was written in this movie that was subsequently removed from this movie that will make this movie and a character in this movie make perfect sense once you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent Hanna, the detective played by Al Pacino, is on cocaine. It's in the script. He's supposed to be a cokehead to help deal with his job. He talks a lot about the diner scene. He talks about the dream of all the people that he's seen murdered and watching him. So you completely understand why this guy needs something to give him an edge, to give him the strength, to give him, like, all of it makes sense. He was supposed to have a scene where you see his cocaine use. And if you see that, it changes your entire outlook on Vincent Hanna. All of it starts to make sense. Him yelling and screaming and beating the table, give me all you got. Give me all you got. All that begins to make sense when you think, oh, he's on cocaine.
Yep.
Why did they remove this? Why did they take this out of there?
That explains it. Yeah. Why he's so over the top. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we get this really weird. The scene with Hank Azaria, she's got a grenade, like all of that.
Oh, yeah.
It all makes sense when you go, oh, he's done a bump. I get it. I get it. I understand now. All of that begins to make sense, but we don't get that in the finished movie. They removed it on purpose. They did not like what they thought it would do to audiences or how audiences would feel about Vincent Hanna. If I understand correctly, Michael Mann decided he did not like that conflict within the character. I think it would have been great. I think it's a spectacular conflict within the character. That he is using this to mask some of the issues that he deals with on a daily basis because of his job and because of his drive and his determination. But everything starts to make sense when you watch this movie and you go, he just did a line before he came and talked to this informant. That's why he is out there. Like, all of it begins to make sense. Anything else you have on what could have been different?
No, the main thing I had was the Wayne Grill. It could have been Levine, but he very smartly.
Yeah. Well, and you've convinced me that Wingro doesn't even need to be in this movie. Like, I was against you when you started that, but you've convinced me. I don't think he needs to be in this movie. I think you're right.
Yeah, and so that brings me to something I had thought about. Most of these movies, especially the ones that we really like, we talk about that there's no need for a remake. This story is such a great story, but it's so flawed in its execution because of Mann's insistence on putting so much into it, that despite the great performances of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and knowing that whoever were to take those roles in a second row are very likely not going to get to that, I want to see this story told better.
We may get your wish. Yeah. You will not get this story, but in development right now, I'm sure you ran across this. Heat 2 is in development. It is a prequel/sequel to Heat, with Adam Driver connected to it, playing Neil McCauley. He wrote a novel back in 2020. Michael Mann did, outlining the story.
I read that. Yep.
Now they are making a movie. Adam Driver, and I can't remember who is signed up right now to play Chris, but they have somebody else tabbed for Chris as well. That is in production. Like, that is they're working on putting that together right now. So we are going to get more from this universe, this Heat sort of thing. I like Adam Driver. I think he is another guy that may get saddled with things that he doesn't want, especially coming off Star Wars. I thought he might be the best thing about the sequel trilogy. One of the best things about the sequel trilogy even being handed some really terrible lines and situations, I thought he did a great job. I liked his performance. I did not like the words they were putting into his mouth and the situations they were putting him in, but I thought he did, and Daisy Ridley too, did a great job with what they were given. They weren't given a lot. I thought they both did well.
I'll agree with that. I thought his character was over the top whiny.
Yes. But I think that's written in.
But
I think
that's written
into
in. Yeah, that's not his fault. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think he's a better actor than maybe some people give him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
The sequel trilogy is trash.
For the most part, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can handle the prequel trilogy. It's not my favorite, but I can watch it. But I can't even go back and watch the sequel trilogy. And The Force Awakens was so dang good. And then they just didn't have a plan to move forward. That's good. That's neither here nor there. Has nothing to do with heat, except Adam Driver. There's a connection there. But man, Force Awakens was so good. And like people, you're just remaking A New Hope. I know, that's what I wanted. I like A New Hope. Remake The Empire. Remake Return of the Jedi. Yes, do that. I'm fine with that. That's what I wanted.
I'll agree they were on the right track. I'm not going to say Force Awakens was so good, but I'll say it was the best of the three, and it could have been good, and then they just wrecked it.
I think what wrecked the sequel trilogy is them not trusting Rian Johnson and his vision. I think he had a vision coming out of Last Jedi to make something incredible, because everything I've ever seen Rian Johnson do is incredible. Knives Out, I have not seen Glass Onion. Knives Out is incredible. The episodes he did of Breaking Bad are some of my favorites. Rian Johnson is an incredible storyteller. He does a great job with it. You stopped him halfway through his story and panicked because people didn't like the first half of his story on Last Jedi, and you ripped that up, and you just tried to bring in J.J. Abrams and like do something to save this so people stop giving us a hard time, and it ended up being terrible. I think you should have committed and let Rian Johnson do it. Let him do what he was planning on doing. It couldn't have been worse. Rise of Skywalker is terrible. Terrible. Awful. Awful. The Emperor's back. Are you kidding me?
It's a clone, though.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Trust your guy. If Rian Johnson's your guy, trust your guy and let him tell the story. It couldn't have been worse. Anyway.
There was a movement out there where people were really wanting them to start over and just do just kidding. That's not really what happened, and actually make 3 completely different movies and say, this is what really happened. Ignore those other ones. And I mean, it would, I'm certain it would be better if they actually did that.
I think there could have been something magical. I am willing to risk it now because I know it could have been worse. But anyway, neither here nor there. Where does this film rank for you? Now, I think we need to have a little discussion here. Usually we move through this pretty quickly, but I'll be honest with you. Before we started this project 2 weeks ago, moving into this movie, I might have ranked it in one place. Now I might rank it somewhere differently, but I want to let you go first.
Yeah.
Where are you? Where does this rank for you?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question, but I also want to add something because you touched on something that I wanted to do. After we talk about where we would rate this movie, I would like for the both of us, now as a wrap up for these 10 episodes we've done, we don't have to go through all 10, but I want to know your top 3 of the 10 that we've done. And I'll give you my top 3 of the 10 that we've done now that we've done this all. Okay. Because if you're like me, my top 3 are completely different than what I would have guessed at the beginning. Maybe save one, and you probably know which one that is. But it's completely different. Okay, so where Heat ranks ultimately, Heat now, because of the plot holes and the falsehood of the character of Neil McCauley that I did not recognize early on in watching this film the first time and the second time. I don't recall how many times I've seen Heat. I think maybe twice. And now I've watched it. If that were true, I've watched it 4 times. But after these last 2 times, I've realized this reality, and it has dropped this film way down. I mentioned to you before we went live and recorded this that to me, this is almost like the Major League of crime movies, where we talked about how Major League is great only because of the ending scene, and everything else is like there's some moments, but it's really not well done. But they're just elements that make it a good movie, but it's certainly not like in your top 10 or 20 of any list. He has dropped out of before, where I would say it was in my top, I think I would have said in my top 10.
Yeah.
I think I would have said in my top 10. And now it's
not.
No, it's in the 20s to 30s. It's dropped that much. 20s to 30s. It's not top 15. It's not top 20. It's somewhere in the range of 20 to 30. And I wouldn't be surprised if I sat down and wrote movies down that it dropped even further.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think I would have said it was in my top 10. Even today, before we started this conversation, I said top 10, maybe between 10 and 15, probably. I think it's lower than that after this conversation. I think we have unearthed some things that I will not ever see differently when I watch this movie now, which is not a bad thing.
I'm sorry I ruined it for you.
No, it's good to watch things and have a critical eye, and that's fine. I agree. I don't think it's as good. I don't know that I'd call it the Major League of crime movies, but it is a lot of what I love about it is the characters and the performances that we get, and certainly that one scene, and all of that together still is going to keep it up in my list somewhere. I just don't. I don't think it wouldn't be in the top 10.
It's a great story. It could be top 10. It's just that man fudged it up. He fudged it up.
You're right.
He fudged it up. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely correct. So you asked me to look at what we had done and decide what my top 3 movies are that we've done. And what's funny is I went, and I did not do this on purpose, Leo, but I went and looked at what I wrote down my top 3. And then I looked and thought, well, how did we get to those movies? And these are the first 3 that I selected, except for Tombstone. Tombstone was my first pick, but it was a pick that connected sort of our whole motif of Smoking Guns podcast into the movie podcast. So I felt like we had to start there. And so that doesn't make my list. My top 3 that we've covered: Shawshank, Jurassic Park, Goodfellas. And those were my next 3 picks, not in that order. It was Jurassic first, and then Shawshank, and then Goodfellas. I would twist them because Shawshank is my favorite movie of all time. But my top 3 are the first 3 I chose. So I'm not. I feel like I feel like I'm right where I thought I was, based on that. You're different though. You've moved around a little bit. What are your 3?
So number 1 is Shawshank.
Good
Barely.
Man.
It's number 1, but just barely. Number 2, and this is the big shocker for me. Number 2 is Seven. I was floored by that movie, watching it when we were leading up to our episode. I was floored by that movie again.
Really good. It's really, really good.
Again. And I thought about like how I could watch that movie over and over and over again and be floored every single time.
Yeah, really, really good.
It was so good. So 2 is Shawshank, or 2 is Seven, but just barely behind Shawshank. And number 3, I'd have to give the edge to Goodfellas, and here's where that's what's going to surprise you. going back and just thinking about these movies and how they made me feel, I almost wanted to do a tie, but that's cheating. But
Yes.
tied with close to it would be Princess Bride.
Wow.
Because it was so perfect for what it is.
Right.
It was
You're
so
right.
perfect for what it is. Like I'm thinking about like finding things wrong with these movies. Shawshank Redemption is an absolutely perfect movie.
Perfect movie.
Yeah. Seven, an absolutely perfect movie. Goodfellas, not quite perfect, but really good. And Princess Bride is perfect. And that's why I had a hard time. But for what it is, but Goodfellas, you know, I'd have to put in my overall ranking over it.
I believe you're right. Shawshank is perfect.
Yes.
It is a perfect movie. Jurassic Park to me, for what it is doing, for what it is a perfect movie. And the other perfect movie that I believe there is, we haven't even talked about. We haven't even covered. It is Back to the Future. I think Back to the Future is a perfect movie.
It's a good one. Yeah.
For what it is. Like it's not doing it any more than it needs to do, but it's a perfect movie. And that wasn't on our list this time around. And then Goodfellas is my number 3. So 2 of our 3 are the same. Princess Bride, by the way, you're not wrong. Princess Bride is incredible. It's definitely high up there. I agree. So let's talk briefly. We've got a few minutes. We're really kind of running longer than I thought we would. I didn't realize we'd talk this much about Heat. But one of the things I wanted to cover, and I'm surprising you, surprised me with a top 3. I get to surprise you is this experience, doing these 10 movies. What do you think of it on the back end of it now?
I think it's fun. You know, I there's so many movies. Like I find myself constantly telling myself, man, why didn't we have that on our list of 10?
Right.
You know, or like,
yes.
You know, that you know, it's I've had a lot of fun. I think in retrospect, I would have spent more time than what we did picking the 10, because I think there's so many movies that now looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish we would have done this one instead of this one. But
what are maybe 2 or 3 that you're like, if we were to ever do anything like this again, and we're not promising to, but if we were to do this again, these are movies that we would have to cover. We would have to hit. Pulp Fiction is going to be on the list.
Pulp Fiction is absolutely on the list. Lucky Number 11 is another one that I would put on the list because it's right up in the types of movies that I like.
Say that again. I'm sorry. I got a text at the same time.
No worries. Lucky Number 11.
Okay.
Great movie. Fantastic movie. Is another one that I think would have to be on there. I think more throwbacks from the 80s. Like, I mean, you just mentioned Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Those types of movies I'd want to consider more. But yeah, Lucky Number 11 and Pulp Fiction definitely come to mind. I had one the other day that I thought of, and I can't think of it right now, but there was one that I was like, yes, that's one that I'd love to do a podcast on, and I just can't think of what it is right now. But there's quite The Three Amigos would be a great comedy to cover. I think we actually
I was just looking at our list and I was like, that's one I'd love to do because we've got a whole list of stuff we haven't used yet. I think Back to the Future would be one I would really like to talk about if we were to ever do. Pulp Fiction would definitely be on my list. I do love The Three Amigos. There's one on here that I put on. So a little bit of inside baseball for people that are listening or watching. We built a list and then we checked the ones that we would like to talk about. And we both had to agree that we wanted to talk about it or it was not eligible to be drafted. There was a movie I put on the list. You did not agree that it was something you wanted to talk about, so I did not draft it, but I probably would have. And that is A Few Good Men.
Okay.
I love this movie. It is one of it is also close to a perfect movie to me. And so it would be one that I would lobby hard for. I would try to talk you into covering. And another one that I would do the same thing. Again, same situation as When Harry Met Sally.
Okay.
I think it's great. It is the romantic comedy. It is what every other romantic comedy is built on, because it started the way you do romantic comedies, and they have built everyone poorly on a really great movie to me, which is funny because if I'm not wrong, are those both Rob Reiner movies? Did I just pick 2 Rob Reiner movies?
While you look that up, I remembered the movie Saving Private Ryan.
Ooh, good one.
That was one that I looked at. I was like, oh man, I'd love to review that movie. Interview with a Vampire is another one that I think would be great to talk about.
I picked 2 Rob Reiner movies.
2 Rob Reiner movies.
It's just crazy. Interview with the Vampire I've never seen. I do love Saving Private Ryan. The first 25 minutes of Saving Private Ryan is one of those scenes that I was talking about earlier that can elevate an entire movie into a stratosphere. It can take something great and make it incredible. The first 20 minutes, the visceral, incredible way that is shot, and the way you feel, the just pulse pounding sort of look. I don't know what guys go through in war. I don't. I've never been there. I never will be there. But that's as close as I want to get. Like that is as close as I can imagine to that experience be. And I know it's worse. I know it's more. But that is an incredible scene, an incredibly well done scene. And the fact that it did not win Best Picture and Shakespeare in Love did is ridiculous. And why we should never trust, one of the reasons we should never trust the Academy. I don't know that we'll do this again. We have to have some offline conversation about how this went. There are some changes I would make to the format. I don't know that we would do it live next time. I think this is something that you and I would record. And so we could do it a little more to our schedule and just release them and let people, I think that's a change I would make if we were to ever do this again. And I don't know if we will. It's been fun. I love talking about movies. I think you and I are close enough to on the same page that we can have great conversations, but we see different things. And so it's been a lot of fun. But this is the end of movies. This is the end of Holstered Guns for the time being. We are getting back to football. And so if you're hanging out with us, or you just jumped on, or you've been listening to this whole thing, hoping that we would tell you what's next, you're going to see some things coming out on social media here in a couple of weeks. But the Smoking Guns podcast will be back, and we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to start back with season 5. Can you believe it, Leo? Season 5 of the Smoking Guns podcast, the day after the Super Bowl on February 10th. And we are going to have special guest, head coach, general manager Tom Manas, is going to be on with us to talk about the Gunslingers' upcoming season, upcoming camp. And so we're going to hit the ground running. We'll be, I think, every other week for about a month. And then we will start diving in as the seasons get started. Our plan right now is to cover Gunslingers and Brahmas and Caballeros. So we'll be doing 3 different things, and we'll try to make all of that work and keep our shows from running into, like, we're not doing 3-hour shows. So
no,
we're going to have to find a way to find a good balance for these 3 different things. But we want to reach out to, we've already reached out to Tom Manas. We want to reach out to Hal Mummy and have him on very soon, the head coach of the Caballeros. And then we want to try and see if we can have Wade Phillips on and get all 3 of the head coaches before we get into the season. Wade Phillips would be a big get. It could be a hard ask. We've tried.
Yeah.
and we have not had a whole lot of success, although we did have Hines Ward, the original coach of the Brahmas, on. We were the first to have extended time with him in the podcast world. So never say never, but we're going to be back in February there, February 10th, day after the Super Bowl. That's the end of the NFL regular season, and we move into the off season for the NFL, but we're in season at that point, moving forward. Who do you think wins? Who's your Super Bowl picks since we're dabbling in football right now?
Okay, so realistically, I think it's Bills Eagles. I'm really hoping for Bills Commanders, though. I think that would be so much fun. The Eagles have been there plenty. Just the story right now with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders' turnaround from last year is just so phenomenal. It would be
awesome.
Dan
Quinn, man.
It would be awesome to see them in the Super Bowl. I'm pulling for Allen and the Bills. I really want them to win. I also, let's be real. I can't stand the Kansas City Chiefs. So at this point, I really, really want the Bills to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I think they definitely have the talent to beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs really could have lost to any of the playoff teams outside of the Houston Texans. Even Denver, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Denver fan. I just think Denver can beat Kansas City. I think they proved it in the season. Not with the last game, but the game they actually lost at the last second with the blocked field goal. But I think that was a telling game. Mm-hmm. So I'm really, really hoping that it's the Bills. If it's Kansas City in the Super Bowl, I'm not going to watch it. I just won't watch. I won't care. It's the the upside of getting to watch them lose to the other team.
I'm done with the NFL. That's it.
Is not worth the possibility of having to watch them win another one. I'm just so fed up with the Kansas City Chiefs.
And to be the first team to win 3 in a row, I don't want to see it. I would love to see it be the Commanders and the Bills. I think it's going to be the Eagles and Chiefs, and I do think the Chiefs are going to win their 3rd Super Bowl in a row. Like, I don't want it, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Do you think the Chiefs are better than the Bills, or do you think the Chiefs and the officials are better than the Bills? Yes. That's the only way they get to the Super Bowl. And that's why I say, if they do, I'm done. Like you said, I'm out. I'm out.
It is weird for a Dallas Cowboys fan. You can see above me what a Cowboys fan I am to say, I think Washington deserves to be in the Super Bowl. That's a very odd thing to hear from a Cowboys fan. But I'm going to be honest with you. Last year, at the end of the year, I believed it was time for the Dallas Cowboys to can Mike McCarthy and promote Dan Quinn. And if they had done that, so much changes for the Dallas Cowboys and for the Washington Commanders. Mm-hmm. But Dan Quinn is showing you right now that he's a good coach. He was always a good coach. Mm-hmm. He did have a collapse in the Super Bowl, but that's not him. That was his team. That was guys on the field. That's not Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was a better coach than Atlanta deserved. And he is a better coach than Washington deserves. He is doing amazing things. And when you look at that team, that is not an amazing team. They've got some really good pieces. Mm-hmm. Jaden Daniels is good. Their running back is good. They've got Terry McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Terry McLaughlin. He's good. They've got some really good pieces on defense, but they are not. They are playing above their weight class right now, and they have the ability to win the Super Bowl, and they don't really deserve that. And that is coaching. That comes down to
greater
coaching.
than the parts.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because he's a really good coach, and Jerry made a huge mistake by keeping Mike McCarthy and allowing Dan Quinn to walk over to a division rival. And now Jerry is frantically figuring out what he's going to do at head coach. And what he should do, what he should have done was canned Mike McCarthy early or told Mike McCarthy, we're not going to re-sign you. And he should have went and got Mike Vrabel. He didn't do that. Mike Vrabel wound up in New England. So what he should do, as dumb as this sounds, Leo, this is my prayer, that he goes and hires Jason Witten to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Does that make any sense? Not really.
No. Totally inexperienced head coach.
I know he's an experienced head coach. He's won 2 Texas football championships in a row. He knows what it takes to win championships on some level. And so I'll take that, but we have to throw a Hail Mary at this point. We're not going to get Ben Johnson. He's smarter than that. We might get Aaron Glenn. That would be interesting. I like that idea. What we're most likely going to get is Brian Schottenheimer, which is just Mike McCarthy Jr.
I won't disagree. I won't disagree.
I'd love to see Jason. I'd love to see Jason Witten. My dream, I'll make this even more ridiculous for you, Leo, is Jason Witten gets the head coaching job and he calls his good friend, best buddy, and roommate when they were on the Cowboys together, Tony Romo, and pulls him out of the booth to become the offensive coordinator. I'm down.
That would be something. That would be something.
Let's do it.
I think Romo would make a
Is it going to work? I don't know.
You know, offensive coordinators, yeah, you don't know. There's no way of knowing.
I have no idea, but it'll be entertaining, and Jerry loves to be entertaining, and it has a possibility of working. And right now, that's what we need.
What about the other rumor that I heard, or the other,
Dion?
Yeah, prime time. What about that?
I mean, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't like. I've never been a big fan. I like Deion Sanders as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been a fan of Deion's persona, and I think so much of his head coaching, both at Jackson State and in Colorado, is Coach Prime. It is a persona that he puts on, and I don't like that. I actually like Deion a lot more than I like Coach Prime, but I don't hate it. Like it's another one of those Hail Marys that like this shouldn't really work, but let's give it a try. And I'm down to try anything at this point. But he's not going to do that. He's going to hire Brian Schottenheimer, or he's going to hire Kellen Moore, or something like that, and I'm going to hate that. But that's Aaron Glenn would be another one that would be really interesting. I would love to see Aaron Glenn. I don't know if it works, but I'd love to see it tried.
Jerry. So I got a question for you then. If Washington makes it to the Super Bowl, will you be wearing your Commander's hat? Because I know you have one.
Well, if they go up against KC, yes, absolutely.
All right. Okay.
If they go up against the Bills, like I love when fan bases that have been long suffering get an opportunity to win. I would have loved Minnesota to do a lot better than they did in the playoffs, because I think those people deserve it. And Detroit. Buffalo also deserves it. Detroit, that broke my heart. Like I thought they were the team. I thought they were the team of destiny this year. They played like it all year long and then just spit the bit right here at the end. And that happens. And you know what? They'll probably be better for it, because losing something like that gives you a whole different level of determination going into the next year or the next couple of seasons. And so maybe that'll be the best thing that ever happened to them. Although they are going to lose Ben Johnson, and they're going to lose Aaron Glenn to somebody. And so that's going to be rough on their team.
I was really pulling for Detroit. I wanted a Detroit Buffalo Super Bowl. I think that would have been fantastic. But I
wanted Detroit to win the Super Bowl. You hear that, Coach Manas? I wanted Detroit to win the Super Bowl. But
I thought it was interesting that Dan Campbell got Dan Campbelled by the Washington Commanders. Them going for fourth down to convert from fourth down in the red zone, or on the Lions side of the field multiple times, and converting every single time, and then not just converting but coming away with touchdowns.
Yeah.
When they did that combined with the turnovers was Detroit's undoing. But that's a thing that Dan Campbell was known for and was infamous for last year in losing to San Francisco. And they used his own strategy against him, and it worked 100% of the time. Dan Campbell got Dan Campbell. And I thought that was really interesting. not gonna say, I mean, it was unfortunate because I was pulling for them.
Yeah.
But man, what a story the Commanders are. It's crazy.
They are. And I love Dan Quinn. I loved him when he was in Atlanta. I loved him when he was our defensive coordinator in Dallas. And I have given up on hating teams. And so the Washington Commanders, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I know I'm supposed to hate them. I don't hate teams. I don't have to hate teams to love my team. And so I don't hate people anymore. I don't hate the Eagles. They're not my favorite. I don't hate the Chiefs. I'm tired of seeing them win. I'm
sorry, but I hate the Chiefs. I'm sorry.
And I don't hate the Commanders. In fact, I really like JT Daniels and I really like Dan Campbell. So there are pieces of those teams that I really like. I've just given up on hating teams. I don't have to hate a team to like my team. I can love my team without hating other teams. And that's been my philosophy for about a year or 18 months now. And I love it. It is so much more freeing for me as a sports fan to go, good for them. I'm happy for them. Even if it's the Washington Commanders holding the Super Bowl trophy, something that would have absolutely killed me a few years ago. I love the fact that I can go, good for Dan Quinn. He deserves that because he does.
Okay, so I understand that philosophy. I applaud it. I give you credit for it, and I understand it, and I don't think it's a bad thing. But can you really apply that to the Chiefs with the tip of the scales towards them when it comes to officiating? How can you not hate that? It's not good for the sport. It's not good for football.
No, it's not. But it is good for Andy Reid.
That's about it. For who?
It is good for Andy Reid.
Yeah.
I like Andy Reid. I think I like Andy Reid so much more in the last 2 or 3 years than I ever have before, because I have seen him with his sense of humor in some of these, honestly, in some of these State Farm commercials.
Yeah, the commercials.
His sense of humor and the way he will poke fun at himself and be funny. Like I've gained a certain amount of respect for Andy Reid that I've never had before. And it's good for it. Like if he wins 3 Super Bowls in a row, he's earned it. He's had a long career. He's been incredibly successful. He's a good football coach, whether I like the team he coaches or not. And would it be good for him to be that guy to do something that nobody's done in 54, 57 years, whatever we've been doing Super Bowls for? Yeah. I mean, if I've got to find silver lining somewhere, it would be Andy Reid.
I will agree with you. I like and respect Andy Reid, but I don't like him that much.
Yeah, I like and respect Andy Reid, and you're right. Like I don't want to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. I would rather they not. But if they do, okay. All right, good for them. Good for Andy Reid. Good for Pat Mahomes. Like he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he's going to be one anyway.
He will be. And he should be.
And I mean, even if his career ends, this year, he retires and walks away from the sport forever because what is there left to do? And I'm going to go take my millions and millions and millions of dollars and live the rest of my life. He'd be a Hall of Famer. So, but I would prefer it be any of the other 3 teams. And I think we've learned for everybody that gives Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys a hard time, you better bring that same energy to Baltimore and Lamar Jackson from this point forward, because they are becoming almost the same thing. They are doing really well and putting up great numbers in the regular season, and then they're getting into the playoffs and they're choking things away. And if you're going to do that to Dak and the Cowboys, I understand it. You're right. You're being truthful, but you better bring that to Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens too. Same energy. Am I wrong?
No, that's fair. That's fair. Although I will say more of the blame lies on Dak's shoulders than on Lamar's shoulders in their shortcomings in the playoffs.
How so?
They didn't lose this game because of Lamar.
He didn't win the game. That's what that is his
star tight end fumbled the ball in one possession, and then on the very next possession didn't catch the ball wide open for a 2-point conversion. The ball was right where it needed to be. He just didn't catch it. And then he fumbled the ball the possession before that where they had all the momentum and were going to take the go-ahead score. That's not on Lamar Jackson.
I could take you to all of Dak Prescott's playoff losses. I think I could do this. I'm doing this on the fly, so maybe I'm wrong about this. Like, he has not played well in the playoffs. I'm not giving him a pass.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also tell you they have been outcoached. Outcoached.
Mm-hmm.
Outcoached. And there's nothing Dak Prescott can do when you're outcoached. Like, there's no amount of putting the team on your shoulders when your entire team, defense and offense, has been outcoached and beat with the X's and O's of the game that your quarterback's going to do to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they've been outcoached by San Francisco twice, and they got outcoached last year by Matt LaFleur against Green Bay. Outcoached. Straight up outcoached.
Yeah. So, don't disagree on that.
And I don't think that's Dak's fault. But regardless, like, Lamar Jackson is an incredible player and a great quarterback, and he should be called that. So is Dak Prescott. My point is not Lamar Jackson is bad. My point is, if you're going to say Dak Prescott is bad, then you have to start applying that same standard to Lamar Jackson at this point, because he's doing the same thing. He is getting his team to the playoffs year after year, high seeds in the playoffs and early exits. And that's what you give Dak a hard time for. And he's not a great quarterback because that's what happens. So you have to start doing that with Lamar too. You have to apply that standard to both of them. And you don't want to do that because Dak is the Cowboys and everybody else and Lamar Jackson is the Ravens. But that's not right.
Okay.
I could even make a case that Lamar has a better situation because he has a better coach. And he has I think the Cowboys have a more talented roster. I think the Baltimore Ravens have a smarter front office and head coaching staff that uses their roster way better than the Cowboys use theirs. And so I actually think the Cowboys are more talented, but you'll never see that ever because we don't have the coaches for that. Anyway.
I agree with everything you said. I just think that Lamar Jackson has been let down more by his teammates than Dak Prescott has been let down by his
coaching. Though.
Yes, he's been let down by his coaching, but Lamar Jackson has been let down by his teammates.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And Lamar Jackson has had more success in his career than I thought he would. I did not think he would be as successful in his career as he has been. Not that I did not trust him to be athletic and amazing. I just thought that he would have a very short career
because of his style of play.
I thought his style of play would shorten his career, and it may. But he has proved me wrong over the last couple of seasons, going the full season. But now he's got a problem in the playoffs. And again, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying if that's the standard that you've applied to Dak Prescott, you're going to have to explain to me why you're not applying that to Lamar Jackson, because you won't. No, not you, Leo, but people won't do that, and you're going to have to explain to me why, because on paper, it's the same thing. Like putting up great numbers in the regular season, winning 13, 14, 15 games. We win in 13 games. And then going into the playoffs and getting out the first time they see playoff football. That's problematic. But that doesn't mean that they're bad players. They're good. Is Dak Prescott the best quarterback in the NFL? Deserves more money than any other player?
No.
No. But he's not going to be that very long because someday, this offseason, somebody else is going to sign a contract that's going to top his. That's how this works. And one other football story that we're running long, but we're having fun talking football. Aaron Rodgers, if you're listening, and I know you do, it's time. It's time, buddy. It's time to hang him up. It's time to walk away.
Agreed.
You're not going to have any more success. It's done.
Especially not with the Jets. But yeah.
Well, he will not be the quarterback in New York next year. I can't imagine any situation where he and they agree that that's the best thing for both of them. I just can't imagine that's true. So he will be a free agent at some point. And what's he going to do? Sign with Minnesota and complete the Brett Favre trifecta and run Sam Darnold out of a job where he's been okay and piddle away 2 years of average football and then leave?
I know where I want to see him. I want to see him in Cleveland, where quarterbacks go to die, and see if he actually can not do what all other quarterbacks have done in Cleveland. He won't, but it would just be like so fitting. Like that's where if he's going to be in any team in the NFL, Cleveland is where he deserves to be.
So a couple of seasons ago, Cleveland bet everything on Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson will never play another game. I don't think.
They lost everything. They're done. Mm-hmm. Like Deshaun Watson is a bust.
He's done.
Which is crazy because when they were only a year apart, I believe, there was a time that I would have told you early in their career that the two young quarterbacks that were definite top 5 quarterbacks in the league both wore number 4 and played in Texas at the same time. They were Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson. And I would have taken either one of them to be my franchise quarterback. Mm. And Deshaun Watson has just completely imploded. And that's unfortunate because he had a heck of a career that just got cashed.
Railed.
Because he wouldn't play in Houston. He wouldn't stay in Houston.
Yep, but he's getting paid every dime of that contract. So does he care? I don't think so. He doesn't
Absolutely
care.
Not.
No.
but Cleveland did the most Cleveland thing in the world.
Yes.
Threw away Baker Mayfield, who, by the way, took his team to the playoffs and has more playoff years ahead of him. You threw that guy in the trash and paid a huge guaranteed contract to a guy that played, 16 games for you, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And you're stuck with the rest of that contract. It's the most Cleveland Browns thing ever happened.
That's why Aaron Rodgers would be the perfect fit. That's like the most Cleveland thing to do right now. Go get Aaron Rodgers.
I actually can foresee, or I can picture Aaron Rodgers trying to go to Minnesota for whatever reason. I don't know why his path
played too well.
But full the playoffs and nobody was ever sold on Darnold. All year long, everybody was like, yeah, but when's the bottom going to fall out of this? I could see them giving up on Darnold pretty easily, actually.
I don't know. Darnold played too well through the season. Yeah, you're going to hold the playoff game against him, but it's one game. If you take the entire resume of the season, Darnold is one of those guys that has always had talent, but has just been in bad situations, And when you're in bad situations and you don't learn how to win, you're losing because of the situations you're in. That's not surprising that happened. But give him some time. He's got the talent, and I think he showed it this season. I think he did much more and way better than the Minnesota Vikings expected him to do. They signed him a gap quarterback for the kid from Michigan. What's his name? Who blew out his knee and ended up not playing the entire season. And now they've got a decision to make because, what do you do with him? So, but I think Darnold earned a shot.
We take guys in the NFL at quarterback who are incredibly talented. We put them on the worst team in the NFL, and then we wait 2 seasons and then call them a bust.
Sometimes
that ain't Sam Darnold's fault. That ain't Zach Wilson's fault. Mm-hmm. That ain't Bryce Young's fault. Mm-hmm. That is not on these guys. You put them on terrible teams, and they're you need a team. Football's not the NBA. You can't get one guy and go win a championship with Steph Curry. That doesn't happen in football.
No,
You can't do that.
Mm-mm.
You can't. Tom Brady is only Tom Brady because he had a team put around him.
Yep.
All of these guys, like, you have to have stuff around you, and putting the best on the worst does not make them better. Caleb Williams is going to flash out of this league in about 2 more seasons.
Because he's on the Bears. Sorry, RC, but yeah, I think Philip is probably right.
I mean, unless Ben Johnson, because that's where Ben Johnson's going, right? Unless Ben Johnson is just the offense whisperer that some people seem to think he is. I'm not sure. He could be. But unless that's the case, Caleb Williams, who, by the way, is my favorite story of the draft. He wanted partial ownership of the team that drafted him.
Yeah.
And then he just went out there and looked like that in this season. Players, don't buy into your own hype.
He did okay, but yeah.
You're still a rookie. Well, and he had a terrible situation, which is my point.
Mm-hmm.
We take these great guys, we put them in terrible, like Baker Mayfield wound up on the Browns. Mm-hmm. Well, now we see Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold wound up on the Jets. And now we see Sam Darnold and we're like, oh, they're actually a good quarterback. Yeah, they were a good quarterback. Mm-hmm. You put them on a crap team.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Now I don't know how to fix that because you don't need to be giving good quarterbacks to good teams, or then we're going to wind up with that doesn't make any sense at all. So I don't know how to fix it.
You know how to fix it? You give them time. You don't give them just 1 year or 2 years. You give them time, and really, you don't put the so much expectancy on the quarterback or any one player. It starts with the coach. That should be the priority. Evidenced by, I'll give you 2 teams this season that proved that did way beyond expectations with rookie quarterbacks: the Washington Commanders and the Denver Broncos. Mm-hmm. Good coaching, rookie quarterbacks, way beyond their expectations at the beginning of the season.
You're not wrong.
Those need both time and good coaching. They need both of those things, both of them. The thing right now with Jaden Daniels and what he's doing with that Washington Commanders team, it's an outlier. That's why it's such an amazing story.
Yes.
But it starts with the coach. That's what you got to get figured out first and foremost. Then you go and get those guys. You get your quarterback, whatever. And then you give him some time to learn the game in the NFL, because it is so much different, so much faster than the NCAA, which is where they're coming from.
But I'm going to be honest with you, owners and general managers out there, because I know you all listen to some movie podcast in the offseason of San Antonio football. Owners and general managers, when you hire a coach and fire them within their first 3 seasons, you don't make it to year 4, you're a joke, and we're laughing at you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We just are. The Raiders, you're a joke.
Yep. You can't have a coaching carousel. You got to go get a guy that's good, and you got to give him some time, because it's not easy.
Yeah. You know what one of the consistently good teams in the NFL has been over my entire lifetime? I can't think of a time that the team was bad. The Pittsburgh Steelers. You want to know what else I know about the Steelers? They have had 3 head coaches in my 45 years of life. 3.
Yep.
Causation, correlation does not mean causation, but I'd take my chances keeping one coach, even when look, Mike Tomlin may not be your favorite person in the world if you're a Steelers fan, but I guarantee whoever they would hire to replace him, you don't want.
Yeah. It's true.
And when Mike Tomlin's ready to hang up his spurs and be done, which is coming in the next few years, by the way, there's only so long you can be a head coach in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Tom Landry did it for 29 years. That does not happen. Guys like Tomlin, guys like who's out at Sean McVay. Sean McVay has got 1 or 2 seasons in him before he's just going to walk away from this thing. It is too much. It's too much of a grind through half a year of your life. You can't do it over and over again. And these guys are going to walk away at some point. But when he walks away, you're going to wish you had him again. You did with Cowher. You should have with Cowher. You should have with Chuck Noll. And you will with Tomlin. And that's the way things go. But yeah, you coaches and GMs that are hiring a coach and firing him after 1 season, we are laughing at you. We are all laughing at you. You look ridiculous. If you're an owner of an NFL franchise and your GM hires a coach and then fires him after his first season, you need to immediately walk into their office and fire them. They have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
None. They do not deserve your general manager position. Hire Kevin Costner. I just watched a movie where he's a really good general manager. You should go get that guy. He's as good a general manager as any general manager is going to fire a coach after a year.
I agree.
Stop it. Stop it.
That's how you fix it. Be patient, but it starts with the head coach. Find your guy and stick with him. Yep.
You have to be patient. Quarterbacks and coaches, all your guys, you need to be patient. You need to be patient and trust the process. Something that Jason Garrett used to say all the time. And you know what? Jason Garrett is not a bad head coach. He's not. Mm. He was in a terrible situation with an owner that wouldn't let him be in control of what he needed to be in control in. But I think if somebody gave Jason Garrett a shot again, he would surprise people. I think he's actually a really good football coach.
I agree.
So, all right. Well, that's us talking about Heat somehow. We're coming back to talk football here in a few weeks, the day after the Super Bowl with head coach Tom Menas. We can't wait to get to it. Anything else about Heat or movies or football or anything?
No, I think we've said enough that we can talk about football when people are going to actually listen to us talk about football.
Sure. Well, then, with all that being said, life's like a movie. Write your own ending. Keep believing. Keep pretending. We will see you on February 10th. RC will be with us, and so will head coach and general manager Tom Menas as we head into our 5th season of covering San Antonio professional football. Until then, we'll see you later.
Bye, guys. Thanks.